Okay, part 2. Moving to the castle. Time seemed to pass in the blink of an eye, and soon enough, it was time to leave for the castle. I prepared my panda bus and called for Rosina, Ella, and Hugo to climb inside, at which point Ferdinand's attendant started loading it with boxes of work with stuff. It seemed that Ferdinand intended to stay in the castle and continue his temple duties while observing my high-density cramming lessons. Talk about a workaholic. Definitely, yeah, that's an understatement right there. I will be returning for the autumn coming of age and winter baptism ceremonies. Do not fail to prepare for both, Ferdinand said to his attendants. Deciding to follow his examples, I turned to my own attendants. Even after being asleep for 2 years, I awoke to no problems whatsoever. I trust you all to perform your duties while I am away for the winter. Be well. We pray for your safe return. I climbed into Leslie and followed Daniel's high beast up into the air. Then, with Ferdinand staying close behind, we made our way to the castle. Angelica and Cornelius were kneeling in wait when we arrived, while Norbert came over to greet us. Welcome back, Lady Rosamine, he said. It is good to see you well again. I am glad to be back. Norbert, have this luggage brought to my office, Ferdinand instructed. Norbert rang a bell that he must have pulled out from somewhere, and in an instant, servants came pouring out of the castle to take the boxes we had brought from Leslie. Ferdinand called for me without even sparing them a glance. Rosamond, come to my office once you are finished changing. I have books and documents that you will need to read. Okay, I'll try and be quick. No, do not rush. You need to develop the grace and dignity expected of a 10-year-old. Okay, you lost me. What exactly is the grace and dignity expected of a 10-year-old? Deciding to ignore that, which I didn't understand, I instead focused on Cornelius and Angelica. Cornelius was 14 now, and it only took a glance to see he wasn't a little boy anymore. He looked much more like an adult, and while he wasn't super muscular, he was about as tall as I remembered Lampert being. He had resembled Elvira a lot in the past, but now that he looked more muscular, I thought he was a bit closer to Karstad. I am glad to see you are healthy, Lady Rosamine. You picked up Leslie's face stone, didn't you? I've been waiting to thank you for that, Cornelius. Such praise is wasted on me. I am a failure of a guard knight, one whose mistake forced you to sleep for 2 years. Oh, but you saved Charlotte for me just like I wanted you to, right? To me, this all happened just the other day, so please allow me to express my gratitude. I thank you ever so much, Cornelius. I am honored. He looked up to meet my gaze, and we gave each other small smiles. Angelica was the next to speak. I have been awaiting your return, Lady Rosamine. She was 15 and due to have her coming-of-age ceremony at the end of winter. Ooh, nice. Her light blue hair was bundled in a ponytail that swayed each time she turned her head, and she looked at me with deep ocean blue eyes. Her dainty and pretty features had only gotten prettier, and while I knew them from Daniel that Bonifacius had been training her hard, I couldn't tell that just from looking at her. Her looks have always been deceiving, though, so I guess that makes sense. I've been worried about you ever since I learned how much time has passed, I replied. Did you manage to pass the 4th and 5th grades? Sorry. Fear not. Thanks to Lord Bonifacius, Daniel, and Cornelius teaching me, and Stenlook learning alongside me, I just barely managed to scrape past them. Just barely? Well, I'm glad to hear you've been doing your best. My apprentice guard knights were both looking up very much on the verge of adulthood. I made my way into the castle, heading toward my room with them and Daniel. Rosamond, use your high beast, Ferdinand said. Huh? But I can walk to my room just fine. You are far from healthy. While you are able to move thanks to the magic tools, your body is so weak that even sitting up in bed should be beyond you. Walking around the temple is one thing, but the castle is much larger. Use your high beast. I noticed a rush of tension shoot through my guard knights as Ferdinand repeated his warning. Cornelius's eyes were wavering with worry, and so I immediately brought up my one-person panda bus and got inside. We were making our way to the northern building when I suddenly froze in place. We were right before the hallway where I had been attacked, and an overwhelming fear washed over me as I remembered the kidnapping. It's all right, Rosamine. Lady Rosamine, is something the matter? Cornelius asked. It seemed I was the only one showing any hesitation. I quickly continued forward, hoping my guard knights wouldn't notice my stiff expression. My apologies. I just remembered that the attack took place here. That is understandable, he replied. There was a time when both Lord Wolfried and Lady Charlotte seemed apprehensive about walking down this hallway as well. Even we guard knights remained tense for quite some time afterward. It was a relief to know I wasn't the only one. Thank goodness. When I arrived at my room, Riarda and Ottilie were waiting outside to welcome me. We are so glad to see you well, they said, their tearful eyes speaking to just how worried they must have been. Lord Wilfrid and Lady Charlotte are in the middle of studying right now, Riarda explained, though they are so eager to come and see you that they are practically fidgeting in their seats. Everyone has been waiting for your return, Audley added. Lady Elvira has been sending new Rinsham and the like to your room, and Lord Bonifacius is so excited to see you that he mistakenly came a day early, much to his devastation. I imagine he was upset about that. I've barely interacted with Grandfather, so I don't really know him that well, but he is actually a bit of a goof. Is he actually a bit of a goof? The two changed my clothes as they talked. Then I made my way to Ferdinand's office with Riarda and my guard knights. Excuse me, I said upon entering. Ferdinand glanced at Riarda before pointing to 2 boxes. Riarda, could you take these to Rosemine's room? They are filled with documents that she needs to look over before leaving for the Royal Academy. Certainly, my boy. Rosemine, I believe I already gave you the overview. Study the documents in line with their listed importance. They are notes and transcriptions from my time in the Royal Academy. In addition to newer material organized by Daniel, and here is a schedule from now until you leave for the Royal Academy. Review it sooner rather than later. Okay. I looked over the schedule while Riarda gave instructions to the servants behind me. It was mostly packed with studying, which wasn't actually so bad considering this was pretty much just reading time. What was bad, however, was the physical training and dedication world practice. What the heck is dedication world? Sit down and read these before dinner tonight, Ferdinand said. What are they, I asked, sitting on the chair that he gestured to and tilting my head. The board had a long list of names on it. They are the names of every duchy in the country and their current rank. I know a lot about Ehrenfest, but I don't know much about the country itself. Yes, I suppose your studies 2 years ago were predominantly focused on Ehrenfest. Ferdinand stood up, opened a locked box, then placed 2 maps on the table. They were hand-drawn, and judging by the handwriting marking the locations, I could guess he had made them himself. This is an old map, and this is a new one, he explained once they were both spread out. There had once been 25 duchies, but due to the civil war that had taken place and the sovereignty, they had since been restructured. Now there were 21 duchies, 4 greater duchies, 9 middle duchies, and 7 lower duchies, plus the sovereignty in the center of the country where the royal family ruled. Ehrenfest seemed to be a border duchy at the northeasternmost part of the country. Despite being decently sized, its population and ranking made it clear that it was basically as close to being a lesser duchy as a middle duchy could be. Frembeltag to the west to where Florencia is from, right? And to the south is Georgine's Ehrenbach. I started by focusing on the parts of the map with names I could recognize, and it was then I noticed something extremely important. There was an ocean to the south of Ehrenbach. Perhaps it was the land of tasty seafood? Maybe they have... Shoot, I'm gonna have to... Kombu and wakame. I might even get to eat sashimi again if I ever go there. You might have to teach people how to make that stuff, but maybe. I had long since given up on eating Japanese-esque food here, but now my eyes glittered with newfound hope. My new mission was to make friends from Ehrenbach and the Royal Academy and acquire seafood from them. But just as excitement swelled in my heart, I remembered the cruel reality and sadly slumped over. The political situation right now won't exactly allow for that, will it? Ehrenfest's influence and power is about the median, as you can see, Ferdinand said, pointing at the board in my hands. It seemed for Ehrenfest had previously been at the bottom of the rankings due to being a country province without any specialty goods. We had risen up to just below the middle thanks to having emerged from the sovereignty civil war unscathed. But that was simply because other duchies had lost power rather than having anything to do with their own merits. However, Ferdinand continued, our students have been doing increasingly well at the Royal Academy over the past few years. I imagine our ranking will be a place or 2 higher next year. Ferdinand, the Royal Academy is a place for kids, right? Why would their grades impact the duchy's influence? Those who graduate from the Royal Academy will either work in the sovereignty or in their home duchy. Better grades show that the duchy is raising more skilled individuals and generally indicates it will wield more influence in the coming years. I gave an understanding nod, and so he continued explaining the situation in greater detail. Angelica, Cornelius, and Ernesta received higher grades in the night course thanks to your mana compression method, and some of them who learned with their study materials in the winter playroom have since begun schooling as well. It seems that the duchies have been probing us to find out why our performance has improved so suddenly and so drastically. That's nice. A lukewarm answer. Do recall that you are about to be attending this school yourself, Ferdinand said with an annoyed glare. But I was only going there under duress after being emotionally blackmailed. I just wanted to survive the year without having to deal with any funny business. So I wasn't interested in anything except what I absolutely needed to learn. I'm going to the Royal Academy because I don't want to end up in the same grade as my little sister. But I don't have any interest in the place myself. I'm not in great health right now, so I'm not even going to give my studies my all. I just want a passing grade fit for an Archduke candidate, which is high. I explained, hoping that would be enough for Ferdinand to allow me to cram less. Nope. No way could I give studying my all when I couldn't even move without the aid of magic tools. Unfortunately, Ferdinand seemed to have some kind of attachment to Royal Academy grades. That simply will not do, he said. It'll have to. My options are limited here, and there are some things I just don't want to do. I haven't got enough leeway to work hard for someone else's sake right now. Ferdinand looked at me with slight surprise, then fell into thought. I suppose Charlotte alone is not enough motivation for her, he muttered. A shiver ran down my spine as I realized he was about to corner me again. In any case, you certainly know a lot about what's going on at the Royal Academy, don't you? I said, as trying to swiftly change the subject. I had assumed that not even justice could infiltrate the academy, but Ferdinand was evidently given his information from somewhere. He rubbed his forehead and gave me a deeply exasperated look. You are the one who instructed the students to gather information at the Royal Academy, are you not? Daniel organized everything they gathered. I merely reviewed the report. He paid them a flat fee and said that he wanted you to pay extra based on the value of the information they brought. Oh yeah, I asked them to gather information. That said, I hadn't asked them to spy on other students or anything like that. I just wanted to know what books that were there and what kind of stories that the Duchies had. You didn't tell them that! You just told them to gather information. That's very vague. My explanation had apparently been lacking, though, as what they were bringing me wasn't at all what I expected. I decided it'd probably be best to confer with Ferdinand about the value of the information, since I would consider certain things more worthwhile than he would. Thanks to your efforts, Ehrenfest now has its own specialty product. We will only grow in strength from this point onward. Furthermore, when Archduke candidates are attending the Royal Academy, the morale of students from their duchy always rises. Charlotte and Melchior will follow after you and Wilfrid, which in turn means Ehrenfest will have Archduke candidates at the Academy for quite some time. We would like for you to motivate the other students and raise the duchy's overall grades yet further, and judging by what I am told about the Winter Playroom, that is your specialty, correct? I couldn't help but blink in surprise. I hadn't said anything of the sort as far as I remembered, nor did I even believe I was particularly good at that kind of work. Actually, that's not my specialty at all. I just thought teaching kids to read would lead to more people reading books, and more people reading books meant more people that might be interested in writing books, that's all. I explained, puffing out my chest of pride. I was thinking about getting more people to write books and getting more people interested in reading to encourage the opening of a library at the public's expense. The thought of increasing the duchy's influence in the country by raising our overall grade point average hadn't crossed my mind for even a second. Wow, you are very single-minded on books, aren't you? What am I saying? Of course she is. It seems I yet again underestimate your passion for books, Ferdinand murmured, placing a hand on his forehead and slowly shaking his head. My answer had apparently come as a considerable surprise to him. However, I now understand how to motivate you properly. I have not mentioned this in detail before, but the Royal Academy has a library with the second largest book collection in the entire country. It is incomparable in size and scope to the bookrooms you are familiar with in Ehrenfest. What? The second largest? I exclaimed, suddenly struck with the urge to leave for the Royal Academy at once. Oh boy. Wait. They're the second largest. Who has the largest one? What do you want to bet it's Ferdinand? As he watched me eagerly wiggle in place, Ferdinand's lips curved into a slight grin. You will surely be allowed to spend your time outside of classes in the library, though naturally you will need grades befitting an Archduke's child. Of course, it's only normal to have one's reading privileges taken away as punishment for bad grades, I replied. My mom had used that method all the time back in my Irano days to ensure I kept up with my studies, and that memory alone made me nostalgic for the time I'd spent in that world as a student. I would go to the school library at lunch, then visit another nearby library when all my classes were over. Maybe I could get into a similar routine at the Royal Academy, visiting the library during lunch and after my classes just like I used to. Maybe not quite. That realization blew away all my despair about going to the academy, and now the place shone like a beautiful castle in my mind. I'm going. The Royal Academy's library awaits. I'll do everything I can to get there, I declared, throwing myself into my studies with a sudden change of heart. "Milady, it's about time for you to get changed," Riarda called as I was busy studying. I looked up Ferdinand, certain that I hadn't done nearly enough to visit the library without being chastised, but he merely pointed at the board. "You have made good progress today. Study up to this point by tomorrow." "Understood. I thank you ever so much. See you at dinner," I said, beginning to stand up, but he raised a hand for me to pause. "Tonight's dinner is going to be in celebration of your recovery. Karstad's family will be in attendance, Bonifacius included. Although it is true he was somewhat careless while handling you, it is extremely likely that the antidote will not have been given to you in time had he not found you so quickly. He has been exceptionally worried about you over the past couple years, and that includes him worrying about how he almost killed you by accident. Please make sure to thank him, for his help, that is." In all honesty, when it came to Bonifacius, my thoughts were kind of dominated by the fact that he had violently shaken me around in a bag, then launched me toward a tree at such tremendous speed that I surely would have shattered every bone in my body had Ferdinand not caught me. Still, it was true that I probably would have died anyway had he not come to rescue me. Thanking him was probably for the best. Okay, I'll write out a letter of gratitude before dinner. If you're going that far, then be sure to thank him for training the guard knights as well. He has been quite active in improving the entirety of the Knights Order, with a particular focus on the guard knights protecting the archducal family, all to ensure you are not put in such danger again. Ferdinand was underplaying it somewhat, but I could tell Bonifacius had been working like crazy to boost Ehrenfest's military might over the past 2 years. Additionally, when you hand him your letter of gratitude, you would do well to ask him about physical enhancement magic. To Bonifacius, it comes as naturally as breathing. I believe he has been teaching one of your guard knights to use it as well. Grandfather and Angelica, huh? They do seem like they would get along great as a muscle-head duo. Is that heartwarming or terrifying? I'm honestly not sure. "Milady, it's been decided that I will accompany you to the Royal Academy as your attendant," Riarda said on the other way back to my room. Students were allowed to bring one adult attendant to their dorms with them. My, I feel much better with you at my side, Riarda. She had been serving as my head attendant while simultaneously overseeing Wolfried's studies, so I can imagine she was chosen because she was capable enough to manage the entire Ehrenfest dormitory if necessary. When I mentioned this to her, however, she merely laughed. Oh, no, milady. I was chosen in case you decided to hole yourself up in the library and need to be dragged out. That was Ferdinand's biggest worry." Yeah, he has a right to worry about that. "Oh my goodness. I would certainly return to my room upon closing time." "Wrong, you liar. Back in my Arano days, I would almost always leave the library when it got late. That is, aside from one occasion when I was so busy reading in a corner that I missed closing time. That had only happened once, though. They had nothing to worry about as far as I was concerned, but it seemed they had stopped trusting me long ago. When it comes to books, yes." When we arrived at my room, Cornelius knelt in front of me. "Lady Rosamund, as I will be attending the dinner as well, I hereby request to be relieved of guard duty for the rest of today, and permitted to temporarily leave your person." "Certainly, Cornelius. I am looking forward to eating with you soon." He couldn't sit at the table in his knight armor after having received an invitation from the Archduke couple. To put it simply, he needed to change into fancy noble clothes with these massive sleeves. I entered my room with Angelica while Daniel stood guard outside the door. "It feels lonely without Bridget here." Bridget, who I knew so well from all the time she had spent guarding me in the temple, was nowhere to be seen. There was no helping considering her age, and I was happy about her marriage, but there was no escaping the inevitable sadness when someone you were close to just left. In the temple, the only one I could talk to about this was Daniel, but I felt hesitant to bring it up around him for obvious reasons. "Yeah, you don't want to do that." "Bridget is Guy Ilgner's family, after all," Ottilie said with a calm smile, going on to explain the situation a bit more in detail while changing my clothes. Ilgner had apparently been put in an incredibly tight spot due to the death of the previous Guy. Bridget canceling her engagement and her former fiancé subsequently antagonizing her family. The nobles who had previously served the Guy mostly moved elsewhere, and with dramatically fewer nobles to support the land, the Guib's family had needed to gather together to protect the province. In order to help end this terrible situation, Bridget agreed to become your guard knight, Lady Rosamund, and obtain your support. It is only natural she would hope to marry and expand her family. At the moment, she's doing her best to support Ilgner as the papermaking industry introduces more and more changes. Lady Elvira found Bridget a good husband so that your connection to Ilgner would stay strong, milady. He will do right by her, Riarda added. Elvira loved romance and was quite a socialite unlike me, so I could imagine she had found someone who was excellent for both Bridget and her home. If this is the path Bridget has chosen to walk, then I am fine with it. Speaking of which, has a replacement female knight been found for her yet? At the time, nobody has ever seen you before, so Most declined due to the fact that they would need to enter the temple. And now, however, there are quite a few knights who wish to serve you. You may choose whomever you feel comfortable entrusting your life with, Riarda said. Ottilie nodded. Angelica is due to graduate this year, so starting next year you will also need a female apprentice knight to accompany you at the Royal Academy. Okay, she's going to have to find someone while she's there. The best to pick an Arch Knight or a Med Knight with a high mana capacity. Now that Bridget is gone, your only adult Guard Knight is a lay noble. Riarda wasn't wrong, but I was pretty comfortable with the current situation and didn't really want to change things. Daniel may have been a lay knight, but just as one would expect of someone who claimed to be more of a scholar, he was excellent at tutoring the two apprentices and keeping everyone on good terms. My Guard Knights got along so smoothly because Cornelius and Angelica, an apprentice Arch Knight and Med Knight respectively, recognized Daniel's good qualities and trusted him despite his lay knight status. I cared more about someone who could work well with that dynamic than someone with a lot of mana or status. I will discuss this with my Guard Knights and make my decision later. Not even a strong Arch Knight with plentiful mana would be worth ruining the cooperation my Knights have right now. I don't want everyone to be all prickly and hostile with each other. All I want is a comfy atmosphere to read books in without having to worry about everyone around me. Yeah, you really don't want your Guard Knights to be at each other's throats. You do not. So I kind of agree with you on this one. Dinner time! After getting changed, I wrote to Bonifacius a letter of gratitude just as Ferdinand had suggested. I was using allograph paper, that is paper with red clover-like allographs mixed into it, which was now being made exclusively for my use thanks to Elvira having negotiated with Benno. I relied on my earth memories to structure the letter properly, then folded it as I would the note I used to pass to my school friends. It's a good thing I remembered how to fold paper into a heart shape. This looks a lot like the leaves of an allograph, which makes it even cuter. I wrote grandfather on the heart as a finishing touch, then got into my high beast and drove to the big dining hall while we were having dinner. I would not only be eating with the Archducal family today, but with Karstad's side of my family as well. You seem excited, my lady. Indeed, my father and brothers usually served as guard knights during dinner at the castle. Not to mention during ceremonies and feasts, but this time we'll finally be eating together in the same dining hall. I really am quite excited. The cherry on top was that we were going to be eating Hugo's new recipe and Ella's new dessert. I couldn't wait. Lady Rosamund has arrived, a servant announced, opening the doors to the dining hall for us. Inside were the Archducal family and Karstad's family, including both Ferdinand and Bonifacius. Rosamund! Sister! Both Wilfred and Charlotte called out to me, then Wilfred rushed over. He looks so much more like an adult now, having grown quite a bit taller over the past 2 years. In fact, he hardly even resembled the little prankster in my mind anymore in the past. We had just about looked the same age, thanks to me having repeated my 7th year, albeit with him being on the bigger side and me on the smaller side. But that was evidently a thing of the past. The height difference between us was now so significant that we looked like a 5th grader and a 1st grader standing next to each other. Aw, no way are people going to be believing we're in the same grade now. Oh, I kind of have to agree on that one. Were you always this tiny, Rosamund? I'll grow taller too, just you wait. I was stuck in that giraffe the whole time. It kept me from growing. Since 70 to 80% of my mana change had now dissolved, exercising wouldn't make me abruptly pass out anymore. I'll finally be growing at the same rate as a normal girl, hopefully. I worked hard the past 2 years so that I can protect you. I think I've pretty much caught up to you now, Wilfred said with a confident grin. I wanted to shoot back that he was still far behind me, but I couldn't act smug until I'd seen how much he'd really improved for myself. After all, I wasn't even ready for the Royal Academy yet. You don't need to grow any taller, sister. You are more than cute enough as you are now, Charlotte chimed in. She had grown as well, having transformed from an adorable child into a beautiful young woman. She was taller than me enough that we stood next to each other. Everyone would think I was her little sister. I wanted to cry. My pride as an older sister was in tatters. I wish to protect you now, sister, so I have worked even harder than Wilfred. No, I'm your older sister. I'm going to protect you, not the other way around. You protect each other. Oh my, Charlotte exclaimed, her indigo eyes gleaming with excitement as she looked down at me. I could tell from her expression that she thought my declaration was cute. From her perspective, I was just a little child trying to look tough. How could this be happening? I'm supposed to be the big sister here. I slumped over sadly, at which point Ferdinand rested a hand on my shoulder. Rosamund, they are only being enthusiastic. It's not yet possible for them to surpass you. Show them your dignity as an older sister now before you depart for the Royal Academy. Leave no doubt in their minds that you are on an entirely different level from them. I'll study so hard as I can before leaving for the Royal Academy and show them what a real older sister is made of. Sure, they've learned a lot over the past 2 years, but they're just kids. I can burn through everything they've learned without any trouble at all. I'll have Charlotte's respect again in no time. You have her respect still! She's just older now. I shot my head up and clenched my fist, stealing my resolve, and it was then that I noticed Bonifacius impatiently clearing his throat. Status dictated that I greet the archducal couple first, though, so I stepped before them and knelt. My deepest apologies for any worry I've caused you, I said. Stand, Rosamund, I cannot see your face like that, Sylvester replied with some audible bemusement. I did as he asked, only for him to get on his knees to meet my gaze. A stir ran through all those present, while I merely blinked in surprise. It was unthinkable for the Archduke to kneel before someone of the duchy. I had no idea how to react, but Sylvester ignored the commotion entirely. He placed his hands on my cheeks and pulled me a little closer, carefully peering over my face before pinching my cheeks. Yep, it's good to see you better. Ferdinand didn't let anyone else check on you after you were put in your hidden room in the temple, you know. We were all worried about you. Oh, I thought for a second he was going to give her a hug. That would have been cute. That would have been nice. Though I'm sure Wilfred would have been jealous that she got to hug his dad before he did. I could certainly remember Ferdinand saying something about eliminating all those who would attempt to disturb my sleep. He had apparently taken this duty very seriously, having stopped even the Archducal family from checking up on me. Rosamund, there's something I've wanted to say to you every day for these past 2 years, Sylvester continued, letting go of my cheeks to take my hands instead. It came so suddenly that I had to fight the urge to reflexively pull away. Are you going to make her say pooey again? What might that be? I asked, tilting my head in confusion. I'm saying this not as the Archduke, but as a father. Thank you for saving my children. Thank you, he said, pressing his forehead against my hands. The gesture was presumably a very significant way of expressing one's gratitude, as his retainers standing by the walls all gasped. You're grateful, I get it. Let it go already. Everyone's staring. I looked to Florencia for help, since she was standing a step behind Sylvester, but that only made things worse. You have my utmost gratitude as well, she said, kneeling beside him. You are more than the saint of Ehrenfest to me. In my eyes, you are my savior, the saint of my family. Come on, give her a hug! Florencia should be able to do that. I mean, she's her mother. This was killing me. I'd gone on an irresponsible rampage to save my cute little sister. I hadn't done anything to deserve the Archducal couple bowing their heads to me. That will do for now. Rosamund is clearly petrified for saving me in my time of need. Again. She's not petrified. She's just confused and uncomfortable. Sylvester stood up, now having to look down at me again as per usual. Ferdinand has told me you need to make up for the 2 years you've lost before you leave for the Royal Academy. That will not be easy, but I trust you to accomplish what you must. You often push yourself much too hard, Florencia added. I think you would do well to respect your body just a little more. That concluded our greetings, and so I crossed my arms in front of my chest. You may now speak to those who were worrying about you, Sylvester said. But as I turned to Karstedt and Navarra with a nod, he stopped me with the whisper, Bonifacius is next. As a son of a former Archduke, he's higher in status than the Knight Commander. Don't mess this up. Oops, that was close. Thanks, Sylvester. I changed directions mid-step. If Sylvester hadn't stopped me, I wouldn't have noticed until it was too late. The thought alone made me break out in a cold sweat. Grandfather, I wanted to express my gratitude for you saving me for saving me 2 years ago. Ferdinand informed me that, had you not found me, I might have died. Bonifacius gravely nodded. I'm glad to see you well again, he said with a stern expression. This is a letter of my gratitude, I continued, nervously holding it out to him. Will you accept it? Yes, of course. This is an unusual shape. It's a heart. Don't you think it's cute? A heart? I do not believe hearts look like this. Oh my god! Are you serious? They don't have that heart shape in that world? Oh, that's not cool. They gotta get that in there. Bonifacius said, examining the origami with a clear look of confusion. I gave a big nod and used my thumbs and pointer fingers to recreate the shape. It's a symbolic heart that represents love, I explained. I think you just made his day. I think you just made his day with this. Just the fact of what you just said. Bonifacius froze in place, his eyes wide open. It took him several seconds to slowly return to life. Then he glared at my letter with a conflicted expression. I see. The silence in the hall as Bonifacius stared at the letter weighed down on me like a boulder. Did he not like the heart? He was a military guy through and through, having continued working with the Knight's Order even after his retirement. Not to mention having served as a representative of the Archduke. Maybe I should have made a tough-looking shape instead of a cute one? No, I think he likes it. I'm so dumb. Of course a man would prefer to have, like, a helmet or a dragon or something. If only I had stopped to actually think about this. No, I think you're good. But then as I cradled my hands in agony, I suddenly realized something. Origami could simply be unfolded and then refolded into something else. There would, of course, be a few weird creases, but that was better than him cursing him with his foul mistake. Grandfather, I can always fold it into another shape. Please let me make it into something else for you. Oh, no, this is fine. In fact, I've taken a liking to this shape. There's no need to unfold it. Told ya! I told you he'd like it. Bonafascist raised the origami heart higher into the air, repeating that he was fine with the shape as it was. I sadly slumped my shoulders. This was definitely a frantic attempt to avoid hurting my feelings. I made Gil worry at the temple, and now I'm even making Grandfather worry. It truly was failure after failure. I decided to surrender to his consideration and pointed at the letter in his hand. There was no culture of origami here, so he was unlikely to discover the writing without an explanation. If you open the letter, Grandfather, you can read its contents. Open? You cannot read the letter as it is now, can you? Please hand it to me for a moment. I took the paper Bonafascist, who watched with tightened knitted brows as I unfolded it and then held it out to him. And now you can read it. See? Huh? He was staring down at my letter as though the world were coming to an end. His eyes were wide open in disbelief, and the blood was quite clearly draining from his face. What did you do? What did I do? It certainly wasn't the expression of someone happy to be receiving a letter of gratitude. Had I made some terrible blunder without realizing it? You might want to have asked Ferdinand about this before you did that, just to be on the safe side. But like the previous mayor of Haas, my own face started to pale as I glanced between Bonafascist and the letter. Grandfather, could it be that I used some sort of rude phrasing? Not at all. I am just surprised by how well written this is. You've got excellent handwriting too, Rosamund. So he says, but that wasn't the look of someone who's about to give praise. It was more like he was losing his mind over what I'd just done. I was only trying to thank him, but in the end I'd managed to offend him so badly that he hadn't even been able to maintain his composure. He was currently collecting himself and trying to smooth things over with praise, sure, but he couldn't convince everyone that easily. The worst part was that I didn't even know what I had done wrong. I evidently needed to apologize, but I wasn't actually sure why. Trembling in fear, I scanned the room with tearful eyes in search of help, only to notice that Sylvester's cheeks were twitched. I guess he just barely managed to hold back laughter. Well, I can count him out. The harder I fall, the harder he'll laugh. No, I don't think so. It just depends. Depends on what you do. Look at Ferdinand, because he's the one who's going to give you what you need here. I promptly decided to ignore him, since he was clearly just glad to have new material to make fun of me with, and instead looked to my own parents. They had a deep bond with Bonafascist, so I was sure there was something they could do. Avara noticed my gaze and approached us. Mother, have I done something incredibly rude by chance? Bonafascist immediately began floundering. No, Rosamund, of course not. You have done nothing wrong. There's no need to start crying. Everything is fine, isn't it, Avara? Rosamund is a fine young woman, isn't she? He asked, his eyes anxiously flitting between the two of us. Might I suggest you both calm down, Avara said coolly. Rosamund, I'll also check the letter to see if there are any mistakes. Thank you, Mother. I showed her the letter. She read through it in silence, then looked up. It is quite fine. There are no mistakes. A relieved sigh escaped me and had her full approval. Then what's wrong here? What's going on? I imagine that Bonafascist was merely surprised to see the shape unfold, Avara explained. You can return it the way it was before, correct? Yes, it'll just take a moment, I said with a nod, which in turn made Bonafascist sigh in relief. He seemed to quite like cute things, despite his appearance, and so I placed the letter on the table and folded it back into a heart. Wilfrida and Charlotte watched me with great interest. You can make sheets of paper look like that, huh? Sister, please write such a letter for me in the future as well. It's absolutely adorable. Certainly, I replied. At the very least, it seemed I had managed to catch Charlotte's interest and scrape up a little respect from her. Holding back the broad smile that was starting to play on my lips, I handed the finished heart back to Bonafascist. Here you are, Grandfather. Bonafascist took the letter and once again stared at it with a conflicted expression. Then, after a pause, he nodded gravely. Excellent. It seemed that it was just the face he pulled when he was carefully examining something. Relieved, I glanced around the room again. Ferdinand quickly caught my eye, and upon seeing his expression, I remembered something. He had told me to ask Bonafascist to teach me physical enhancement magic. I have a request, Grandfather. Might I ask you to teach me the basics of physical enhancement magic? Bonafascist stared at me in surprise, then a huge grin spread across his face. He thumped his chest and snorted, Leave it to me. I will make you the strongest person in Arenfest, or she'll die trying. Because she still has money in her that's clumped up. She hasn't gotten rid of it all yet, but she's gotten rid of most of it. I didn't want to be the strongest person in Airfest, of course, nor did I think that would actually be possible for someone like me. I quickly realized I needed to better explain my intentions since the risk of Boniface's intense training sending me to an early grave was becoming all the more real. May I clarify, Grandfather? It's not that I wish to become stronger, but rather that I wish to be capable of moving without relying on excessive magic tools. You wish to be capable of moving, Bonifacius repeated, blinking in utter confusion. I nodded. I'd long been spared any physical training due to my complete lack of stamina, but now that I was healthy, I needed to boost my strength. My muscles have atrophied so much from my time in the Jareve that I can't even move properly without body-enhancing magic tools attached to my body, I explained. My first goal is to no longer have to depend on them. Bonifacius' eyes widened in pure shock, then he looked me over from head to toe as if making sure I truly was alive. That certainly won't be easy, he said. I've never taught enhancement magic to a person who can't even move. How does one make someone who cannot move, move? That is quite the philosophical question. Is it really safe for you to train at all? I ask only that you do not work me to death. Bonifacius and I put our heads together as we tried to come up with a solution, at which point Ferdinand let out an extremely heavy sigh, rubbing his temples with exasperation. At his recommendation, we decided to start by removing the magic tool on my right arm, focusing on using enhancement magic exclusively for that one limb. Dinner soon began, and the events of the past 2 years were explained to me from the perspective of those who lived in the castle. Most of what they told me I had already heard from Ferdinand. My 3 brothers all served as guard knights for the Archducal family, and they had been worked to the bone by Bonifacius. You certainly are strong, Grandfather. It is a shame that, with the bag obscuring my view and the poison keeping me from opening my eyes, I could not see heroic efforts for myself. Yes, I am strong. Karlstedt hasn't beaten me just yet. Bonifacius, who was sitting next to me, went on to explain that the knights had shown much more improvement over the past 2 years than they had previously. Those who had learned my compression method had all grown at an extraordinary pace, and continued to grow even more. The technique seemed to have the biggest impact on apprentices still going through puberty, and it had proven so effective that more and more nobles were asking to be taught. What say we hold a conference teaching them on a compression method soon, Bonifacius suggested, carefully observing my reaction. Your health comes first, of course, but there are many who cannot wait to learn it. A mana compression method had primarily been taught to the guard knights serving the Archducal family, with the rest being mainly arch knights and med knights. Daniel was an exception as the only lay noble to have learned it. His mana capacity continued to grow slowly but surely, as those who were previously of a similar level to him were now grinning fairly impatient. Well, that makes sense. Grandfather's training them all equally hard, but Daniel's growing mana capacity puts him at the very top. Anyone in their position would want to learn the method too. Have you finished deciding who is going to be taught? I asked, looking at the Archducal couple. Sylvester gave a slow nod. All we need now is your approval. Very well, we can hold seminars after winter socializing. After? That's a very long time from now, Bonifacius explained. I gave him a nod. Normal mana compression is taught to first years in the Royal Academy, correct? In that case, I wish to see how much Wolfried has grown. I wish we'll use this to determine whether he is ready to learn my method. If so, his guard knights can be taught as well. Wolfried's guards let out a quiet, collective ooh from where they stood along the wall. I had previously forbidden them from learning the method alongside the rest of the Archducal family's guard knights, since the Ivory Tower incident had put their trustworthiness into question. They had experienced fairly poor mana growth as a result, that is, with the exception of Lampret, who I had taught as a member of my family. My decision had been somewhat rash in retrospect, but the Ivory Tower incident was fresh in everyone's mind at the time, and I hadn't anticipated entering a 2-year coma so soon after. Regardless, the inexorable march of time had put a considerable gap between the strength of Wilfrid's and Charlotte's guard knights, and it didn't take a genius to realize this wasn't exactly an ideal situation. Ferdinand nodded at my suggestion. That will be wise if you wish to give Wolfried a chance as soon as possible. You may make your decision after confirming his behavior and growth. Wolfried, as a ruler of men, you must continue to think before you act. Understood, Uncle. Looks like Wolfried and Ferdinand have gotten a little closer over the past 2 years. It wasn't just on a surface level either. They really did seem to have a deeper bond than before. As that thought struck my mind, the others took turns updating me on the past 2 years. My brothers told me about their special training with Bonifacius. Elvira told me about the growing printing industry in Haldensel. Then Wolfried and Charlotte told me about the winter playroom and how far they had progressed with their studies. In no time at all, our dinner together had come to an end. Do I have time to continue? Yes I do. Yes I do. Okay. Cramming and preparation. My cramming lessons with Ferdinand started the very next day. I spent my time after breakfast reading and reviewing what I had learned the day before. Then when Norbert came to get me, I moved to Ferdinand's office where I continued studying hard until noon. There were 2 desks lined up on which were stacks upon stacks of documents all placed in a neat row. I was having geography and history beaten into my head, both of which were difficult to understand without hard data to look at. Just you wait, O Library of the Royal Academy. I'll be there as soon as I can. After lunch, I practiced the Harpspiel with Wilma and Wilfried and Charlotte. It seems the practice schedule Ferdinand had gotten me to follow before I went into the Dreve was incredibly intense because, despite my 2-year-long absence, it seemed that I was already good enough to go to the Royal Academy even when I compared to how far Wilfried had come. I would need my fingers to adjust to playing again at first, of course, and my time studying music on Earth had probably helped a bit at least, but still. Thank you, Ferdinand. For the first time in my life, I'm genuinely grateful for your brutal teaching methods. Yeah, because if he hadn't done that, she would have been behind. After Harpspiel practice, I would alternate between practicing dedication whirls. What is dedication whirls? And training with the Knight's Order, depending on the day. Oh, never mind, I got my answer. Dedication whirls were apparently a religious act one performed at the coming-of-age ceremony, which was held on graduation day. One would express their gratitude to the gods through song and dance, celebrating winter turning to spring and new life being born. Out of all the apprentice knights, 20 especially talented individuals will be selected to perform sword dances, while 7 Archduke candidates will be selected to perform whirls. Everyone else would sing and provide music. Being chosen to perform was a great honor for both the individuals and their duchies, so everyone worked their hardest in hopes of somehow becoming one of the lucky few. I interpreted this all through the lens of graduation ceremonies being theatrical, thinking back to all the festivals on Earth that were exaggerated as well. I don't even need to practice if there's a selection process, right? I could just leave it to everyone else. No, you fool, Ferdinand scolded me. Archduke candidates are forced to participate, and you can expect practical examinations at the Royal Academy. There are times when archnobles are selected to perform for grades that do not have enough Archduke candidates, and if you do not at least match their talent, you will bring shame to the entire duchy. Dedication whirls were apparently far more important than I had expected. I clearly had no choice but to put my all into practicing, so that I was ready for those practical examinations. Maybe my Urano experience will pay off a little here too? Can you whirl as well, Don't I don't want to see. I don't even know what to expect when it comes to this stupid thing. What is it? Is it dancing? Is it... I don't know. Of course he can do it. Why did you even ask that? He's good at everything else. He responded with a dry, of course. I could imagine Ferdinand had performed a dedication whirl so perfect that it would make all the female students faint, just like his Harpspiel playing had. And I practiced performing the dedication whirl alongside Wilfried and Charlotte. They had already been learning for about a year now, so they had the form down, and their dancing was pretty decent. A dedication whirl has 2 styles, one for men and one for women, but spinning is at the heart of them both. So I'm sure you can imagine our whirl instructor explained it wasn't about jumping or hopping around like in traditional dancing. It was all about spinning while gliding as gracefully and as beautifully as possible. Establishing and maintaining tension is absolutely necessary. In that sense, it's fairly similar to watching a kreisel. Kreisels were exactly the same thing as spinning tops that you spun and then watched as they kept their balance. When a kreisel spins, it almost looks as though it is frozen in place, no? And in that moment there is a captivating feeling of tension. A proper whirl requires you to reach this point where you too look as though you are standing still, for this is when the atmosphere reaches its peak. You must remain perfectly balanced, else your whirl will cease to be beautiful, and the tension you made will disappear in an instant. Now that I thought about it, I seem to recall my traditional Japanese dance teachers having said the same thing back in my Urano days. My mom had made me go to these dance and ballet classes for 3 years, on the off chance I developed an interest in them. She had said that she would buy books for me if the teacher reported I was making good progress, and so I had tried my hardest in hopes of getting as many as possible. Not being able to read books during lessons was exceedingly painful, but I was able to survive all those years nonetheless. Not that any of those experiences is helping me now, since I can't move my body at all. What matters above all else, however, is having true gratitude for the gods in your heart. I see. In other words, Praying seriously might end up like my Hearthstone performance during my winter debut. I need to be careful. I understand everything now, I intoned. Once we had covered the basics of the dedication whirl, we started with a few preparatory exercises. Ow, 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 my body's even stiffer than I thought. On training days, I went to the Knight's Order where I had worked on mastering enhancement magic alongside Bonifacius and Eckert. I would remove the supporting magic tools from one of my arms and practice strengthening that limb, aiming to eventually move it with just my own mana. That said, I apparently couldn't say how I had truly grasped enhancement magic until I could swing weapons and form my high beast while using it. After days of practice, I was finally capable of creating my high beast while using enhancement magic on my unsupported right arm. The sight caused Angelica to stagger back and fall to the ground, her shoulders sinking in despair. Why can you use enhancement magic so easily, Lady Rosemine? It took me 1.5 years of training to form my high beast while using it. I think I've lost all my confidence as a guard knight. Bonifacius roared. Rosemine is a member of the Archducal family. She has more than enough mana for other things, even while using enhancement magic, and there's no point envying the mana capacity of someone mana rich enough to get adopted by the Archduke. You've been working hard to boost your capacity while training to minimize how much mana you use when casting enhancement magic, just to continue as you have been. In fact, why not look to Daniel as an example? The man's a master at preserving mana. Daniel was fully dedicated to using his mana as efficiently as possible, and so he would always try to expand as little as possible during combat. His fighting style was bland and rather straightforward as a result, but it was far less wasteful, even when compared to those of other lay knights. Your teacher is correct, Master, Stenlook chimed in. The master of my master has not yet grown used to enhancement magic, and so she wastes more mana while using it. You are certainly the more adept magic wielder here. There is nothing for you to feel down about. I cannot talk right. Angelica raised her head. Bonifacius had recognized her as his apprentice, and she had since become a knight capable of using enhancement magic that was rare to see even among archnobles. Stenlook seemed to be growing steadily as well. His blade was much longer than the last time I had seen him. You certainly have grown, Stenlook. Have you learned a lot about the world yet? I had no choice, considering my master's poor memory. My struggles know no end, Stenlook replied. He was, of course, speaking about Angelica, but just hearing those words in Ferdinand's voice made me feel as though I was the one being scolded here. Just as a sad frown crossed my face, Bonifacius cleared his throat and held out a short sword. Judging by the sizable face stone in its hilt, I could guess it was also a mana blade. Rosemine, I am growing a mana blade as well, he said. Could you pour some of your mana into it? Grandfather. The truth is, I have been forbidden from pouring my mana into the mana blades of others. That can't be. Yeah, Ferdinand says no. I hated to disappoint him when I was so clearly excited about it, but it just wasn't something I could do without permission. I explained that Ferdinand had forbidden me from doing it again after the Stenlook incident, was caused Bonifacius to knit his brow. Permission from Ferdinand, He murmured, his voice almost a growl. I could sense that he was about to charge forward and smash his way through whatever barriers were stopping him from getting what he wanted. So I hurriedly tried to stop that from happening. Even with Ferdinand's permission, I don't think I could manage it until after I managed controlling my mana again. I still struggled to use it properly due to my time in the Dereve. To use an analogy, it was like going from pouring water into a glass from a pitcher to pouring water into a glass with a bucket. It was a lot harder to control the flow. Enhancement magic required so much mana that it didn't make too much of a difference, since a bucket worked just fine when you were pouring water into a wash basin. But mana blades were a whole another story. I essentially needed to pour my mana into by the spoonful, so a bucket wouldn't do it all. It would take some time before I was used to working with my new increased capacity. Plus, Angelica's mana blade ended up sounding like Ferdinand because I thought she would need someone to give her strict guidance. I can't think of anything that you would need, Grandfather. You are more than strong enough already. I see. More than strong enough, huh? Once training and practice were over, I took a bath to refresh myself and then had dinner. My last task for the day was to read in preparation for tomorrow, though Riarda always ended up having to snatch the book away to get me to sleep. I was constantly learning new things, with more study materials piling up by the day. I naturally enjoyed reading them, but memorizing everything was quite the task. Still, I'm not going to give up. I'll earn Charlotte's respect, become the best big sister in the world, and spend every day in the paradise that is the Royal Academy's library. The first year's lessons about magic didn't seem that difficult. They were centered around the basics of mana and face stones. There were also elements associated with them which was connected to the divine colors of the gods. All I needed to do was memorize which elements were associated with which color, and as someone who already needed to have memorized the Bible, I understood everything after just a quick review. History, on the other hand, was considerably harder. There were so many kings with long, similar-looking names that my brain just turned to mush every time I tried to learn them. The only silver lining was that I already knew religious stories from the Bible that led into the founding of the country, so that saved me a bit of time. You need only memorize the general flow of events for ancient history. More precise information is only relevant for the most recent decades, Ferdinand explained. In particular, you will need to learn about the civil war that occurred and the sovereignty, what changes it caused, and who prevailed. This will be enormously important when interacting with others at the Royal Academy. I looked at the huge royal family tree that Ferdinand spread out in front of me. The royal family and their children had fought among themselves, with the strongest among them doing everything they could to become king. The civil war had started due to the first and third princes coming into open conflict, and the resulting battle was intense enough to split the country in two. The first prince ultimately lost the war, but the third prince was killed by an assassin the first prince had sent out before his death, resulting in them both dying. So the second prince is now in power, correct? Oh, never mind. This reignited the flames of conflict, with the fourth and fifth prince picking up the fight with their respective allies behind them. The fifth prince won in the end, but perhaps due to having been exposed to life-threatening dangers throughout the fierce battles, he held no mercy for the fourth prince, subsequently enacting a large-scale purge against him, his immediate family, and the web of nobles who had provided him with support, which resulted in the whole country losing a lot of power. Are the royal family a bunch of idiots? Yes, but you are without a doubt the biggest idiot of all. Keep such thoughts to yourself. The Royal Academy is presently dominated by nobles who support the fifth prince, that is, the current king. Sure, but he executed more than just his enemies, didn't he? Didn't he really have to kill those princesses and all their children too, I asked, pointing at a section of the family tree. Those who had died normally had a single horizontal line through their names, but each person who had been purged following the Civil War was crossed out with a big X. It made sense that the fifth prince would purge the men who could rightfully lay claim to the throne, but he had executed a princess from the previous generation and other women in the family as well, none of whom seemed to have much to do with the war of succession. It may appear excessive to you, but there was no need to allow seeds of war to grow, Ferdinand explained. Does it not make sense when you consider it insurance? I can understand that, but we're still recovering from the fact that he purged so many nobles who played important roles supporting the country. I don't see how that's not going too far. At the very least, shouldn't he have let this one princess live so she could keep giving birth to strong children? We could marry her to a noble in his faction. Perhaps use her to usurp the weakened rival faction? I really don't think he needed to kill her. Those are strong arguments, but this princess in particular sealed her own fate. She infamously had many affairs with multiple men in hopes of obtaining children with so much mana as possible. By leaving her to her own devices, the fifth prince would run the risk of someone claiming one of her children to be the son of one of the dead princes, which could possibly lead to an entire new war. Ooh, yeah, that is true. Even if they were claiming false accusations on this one, that would still be a bad thing. Hearing about the royal family doing whatever they wanted without consequences made me sick to my stomach. So what if the princess had a bad reputation? So what if nobody knew whether she had given birth to one of the prince's sons? It wasn't much different from the Blue Priest, if you ask me. Now that both the royal family and the nobility have diminished greatly in size, both wish for nothing more than to increase the size of their houses. Due to the magic tools attached to your body, I believe your enormous mana capacity will not be immediately apparent to others at the Royal Academy, but regardless, take care to not be abruptly kidnapped while you are there. What the heck? That's terrifying! It is the reality of your situation. Under no circumstances are you to leave the side of your guard knights or regard, Ferdinand said. I nodded over and over, my eyes brimming with anxious tears. In between reading my study materials, practicing the replication whirl, and training with Bonifacius to learn efficient enhancement magic, I needed to prepare to leave for the Royal Academy. First came deciding what outfits I would need. Plenty of cloth had been prepared so the clothes could be made at a moment's notice, but since nobody knew when I would wake up, nothing had started yet. There wasn't much time left before I needed to leave for the Royal Academy, so Elvira's personal seamstress, Florencia's personal seamstress, and Karina, who was basically being treated as my personal seamstress, were all working together to make clothes for me. To that end, both Elvira and Florencia visited my room. To think you had students gather information on fashion trends in the Royal Academy, Rosamund. You are so full of surprises, Florencia said. Among the information Daniel had organized from the Royal Academy, students were detailed notes on what fashions were popular with archduke candidates from other duchies. An archnoble by the name of Brunhilde had recorded this information explicitly for Charlotte and me to reference when preparing our outfits, it seemed. Nice! Brunhilde seems cool. So far, I could be completely wrong. It wasn't as though I had intended for this to happen, but Florencia nonetheless praised me, for the foresight I certainly didn't have. It felt as though all the information was benefiting someone in one way or another, so it seemed best to just have the students keep doing what they were doing. Incidentally, not a single person had recorded any stories from other duchies for me. Well, because you didn't specify which information you wanted! You just said they had to gather information. I had to admit, though, the fault was all mine for not having provided clear instructions, instead writing nothing more than "Please gather information" in the Royal Academy. When I had realized this and sadly hung my head, Cornelius had pointed out with a smile that nobody could have extrapolated that I wanted to gather stories for a request like that. "Milady, the first thing we need to decide on is an outfit for you to wear during this year's winter socializing. Can I not just wear what I wore 2 years ago? For better or worse, I haven't grown in the slightest." "I'm afraid that I don't think they like you re-wearing outfits." Briarda and I discussed which of my outfits would need to be made first. She wanted to make them in the order I would be wearing them, but I wanted to prioritize those I would need at the Royal Academy. I sadly hadn't grown at all while asleep, but this meant I could just continue wearing my clothes from 2 years ago without issue. Elvira, having heard both sides of our conversation, let out a sigh. "I now understand what Ferdinand meant when he said your perspective is frozen in the past. Rosamond, do listen. Going to the Royal Academy is a proclamation that you have become 10 years old. Your skirts will need to be extended, and so even with your lack of growth, you cannot continue to wear your old clothes." "Oh, good point. The skirts do need to be longer now." "Well, I mean, that shouldn't be too difficult." Upon turning 10, girls' skirts changed from being knee-high to shin-high. This was supposed to be a moment when one reveled in their growth, but I was the same on both the outside and the inside. On top of that, I missed my birthday celebration, so I didn't feel even the slightest bit overjoyed about being 10. It just felt wrong. "What else can we do to prepare a new outfit for you to wear while participating at the feast marking the start of winter socializing?" "I say we simply alter the skirt on one of my existing outfits. More alterations shouldn't take that long to complete, right?" Then called Karina over from the group of seamstresses lined up against the wall. "Karina, I would like for you to alter the skirt part here. Add new cloth on the inside so that it reaches my shins, then pleat the existing skirt like that and decorate it with flowers. I was suggesting we make something similar to a bubble skirt like I had done with Tuli's baptism ceremony outfit back in the lower city. My socializing outfit wasn't very important to me, so I wanted to get through it with only the simplest alterations possible." Karina had long since learned my simple alteration methods from Mom, and so she understood what I wanted at once. She took out a needle and thread, held the materials together, then secured it with basting stitches to make a simple bubble skirt. From there, she had another seamstress bring her more cloth while she explained to Elvira and Florencia how she was intending to alter the outfit. If we stitch new cloth to the inside of the skirt and pleat it so Lady Rosamond has explained, it will appear like so. Is this acceptable? "Oh my, how lovely! The shape is delightful, but you must use cloth of a color in fashion this year for the extended skirt," Elvira said. Florencia nodded. "Plus, if you're going to decorate the pleated skirt with flowers, would it not be ideal to decorate the chest area in a similar fashion?" Karina noted down Elvira and Florencia's orders on a board, then took out the flower decorations she had brought with her and placed them on the suggested parts of the outfit. "If we were to eliminate your suggestion, Honorable Archduchess, I believe it would look most attractive to line up small flowers next to each other like so," Karina said. "Or implement your suggestion. Do you have any preferences?" My two mothers excitedly chatted amongst themselves while deciding on the size and colors of the decorative flowers, then selected which cloth to use from all of those Karina had brought based on color and quality. Measurements were taken in the meantime. There were no changes as expected. With my winter socializing outfit selected, I next needed to decide what to wear at the Royal Academy. There were no school uniforms, but it was a rule that students needed to be dressed primarily in black. This was apparently a show of respect to the all-absorbing god of darkness, with the color also symbolizing one's desire to greedily take in the knowledge of being taught. Black being the primary color was the only rule, however. Students were allowed a fairly surprising amount of freedom with everything else. According to the information Brunhilde had gathered at the Royal Academy, there were some who wore frilly clothes with colorful embroidery, and others who wore tight-fitting clothes beneath bowler-esque jackets with white fluffy sleeves, allowing them to adjust their sleeve size according to the classes they were attending. I would have preferred an outfit with adjustable sleeves over one with impressive embroidery, I noted. Long sleeves were nothing but an annoyance. to me, but there were some classes like those on court manners that required them. The most practical and convenient solution I could think of was a long-sleeved bolero, which could simply be removed when the long sleeves weren't necessary. But unfortunately, Florencia, Elvira, and Riarda all shook their heads at my suggestion, crushing my dreams at once. An Archduke candidate cannot wear such an outfit. Really? But Archduke candidates have to attend practical classes as well, no? Won't the sleeves get in the way? Conquering that challenge with grace is only natural for an Archduke candidate, my dear, Florencia said with a smile, refusing my suggestion without any further room for debate. I supposed it wasn't too much of a problem. I would just need to bring a long cord of my own so that I can manually adjust my sleeves as necessary. I don't know if they'd let you do that, but whatever. Aside from my proposed alteration, my opinion on the clothes were largely ignored. The three women decided what outfits I would be wearing almost entirely on their own. This was probably for the best, though, since I didn't want to end up wearing abnormal clothes that made me stand out completely from everyone else. And so, thanks to the many seamstresses all mobilizing at once, my outfits were safely completed before winter socializing began. Rosemary, what do you think about your personal chef and musician being sent to the Royal Academy with you? Sylvester asked one day at dinner. At the Royal Academy, students lived in dormitories that were separated according to duchy. The musicians who worked in each dormitory were selected from the personnel of 5 high-status nobles, while 5 chefs and their servants were chosen from the castle's kitchens. As Wilfred and I were the highest-status nobles in our dormitory, being Archduke candidates and all, our personal musicians were naturally to be included. Ella and Hugo, however, weren't castle chefs. They were my personnel who followed me wherever I went. So it seems Sylvester wanted to get my permission before sending them off. We are planning to send them back to the temple while you were at the Royal Academy, correct? That'd be a waste. We should use their skills as much as possible. I don't mind taking them along with me, after all. I'd prefer to being able to eat food I'm familiar with. To be clear, though, we won't be teaching the chefs that come with them any new recipes. I didn't mind Hugo and Ella sharing the original recipes they had made while I was asleep, but my personal ones were business secrets that I couldn't share without first receiving payment. Sylvester nodded sadly, having clearly been at least a little hopeful about obtaining new recipes. No helping that. Still, if possible, I want you to debut the recipes I brought from you at tea parties and Archduke candidate gatherings. Did you not want to keep those a secret, I asked, remembering his strict orders to keep my study materials, picture books, and recipes hidden from other duchies? Perhaps this was him lifting the ban? Sylvester deliberately crossed his arms. Everything you made carries with it enormous influence, so I thought it best to keep them a secret until you enter the Royal Academy. You are to spend the next 6 years there as an Archduke candidate, and I want to use this opportunity to boost Ehrenfest's influence as much as possible, he said, wearing the serious expression of an Archduke. I couldn't tell exactly what future he was envisioning here, but given our current relationship with Ehrenbach, I could imagine we want as much power as we could get. From what Ferdinand has said, you want me to raise everyone's grades in the Royal Academy, I believe. That's right. What's my budget for accomplishing this, I asked. If you genuinely want to raise the entire duchy's grades, there are several plans I could execute, though they are much too expensive for the other students and me to finance ourselves. My options will change depending on how much the duchy is willing to dedicate toward this. Money was necessary for doing pretty much anything, and then we had to consider time as well. Had I woken up just a year earlier, there was a lot more I could have done to prepare for this. I am leaving for the Royal Academy so soon that there's not much I can do right now. Concrete preparations will need to start in spring. I will spend this year focusing on confirming the results of our study materials, comparing the gathered information to reality, and so on. In other words, getting up to date on the current situation. I will solidify my plans to increase the duchy's overall grades once that's done, and I trust you to provide me the funds necessary to enact them. Alright, I'll leave the Royal Academy to you and Wilfrid. Do your jobs as Archduke candidates and lead Ehrenfest to prosperity, Sylvester said, once again speaking as an Archduke. Wilfrid nodded with a stern expression. Understood. My packing for the Royal Academy progressed smoothly under Riarda's guidance, and autumn came to an end as Ferdinand continued cramming knowledge into my head through dense lectures. The falling snow signaled that winter had begun. Okay, I'm going to have to end this off here. I'll see y'all next time.